I always thought the end of the world would be loud. Nuclear fire, riots in the streets, maybe a final broadcast where some panicked official tried to reassure us while the cameras shook. But when it finally came, it wasn't like that at all. It was quiet. I was stationed at the Kepler Array out in Nevada, a lonely little outpost where the stars were our only company. Our job was simple: track deep space signals, log anything unusual, and stay out of trouble. We were supposed to be looking for radio transmissions, maybe the faint hum of an alien civilization. What we found instead was silence. Not ordinary silence. An engineered silence. Every frequency went dead at once. The first thing I noticed was my coffee mug rattling on the desk. Then the sky above the desert, black and perfect a moment before, became crowded with shapes. Not meteors, not ships we'd ever built. They were enormous, dark enough to blot out the stars behind them. No lights, no markings, no attempt to communicate. Just massive silhouettes sliding into orbit like vultures over a carcass. I didn't even have time to hit the alarm before the first strike. Las Vegas lit up the horizon, a blooming orange glare that lasted only seconds. The blast wave never reached us. There was nothing left to reach us. Entire cities were flattened by weapons we couldn't even track. They didn't fall like bombs. They carved through atmosphere as beams of compressed energy, turning skyscrapers into glass and asphalt into vapor. The brass still thought it was a war. I heard their frantic voices over the encrypted bands as they scrambled fighters, ordered nuclear retaliation, called up reserves. But you can't fight what you can't touch. Our missiles never reached orbit. Our planes never got off the ground. Within 72 hours, we'd lost every major population center on Earth. Paris vanished mid-evacuation. Sao Paulo's rivers boiled from the heat. Boston, where my sister lived, was just a crater of fused sand by the time I got the news. I should have died with the rest of them. A direct strike hit Reno, just 30 miles from our position. The shockwave rolled across the desert and ripped through our little outpost like paper. I remember Keller, our communications officer, screaming into his headset, demanding orders from command that no longer existed. I remember the blast slamming me into a wall, my lungs filling with dust and blood. Then, nothing. When I woke, the world was gone. The Kepler Array was nothing but twisted girders. The people I'd worked with for 3 years were lying still. Some missing faces I'd known by heart. The air smelled like metal and burning plastic. My ears rang with the memory of silence, no birds, no distant traffic, just wind. I wasn't alone, though. 8 others had survived in the deep shelter below the array. We pulled each other out of the rubble like miners digging out from a cave-in. None of us spoke at first. What was there to say? Over the next week, we learned how bad it really was. The enemy, we later learned they called themselves the Cure, didn't just kill people. They erased infrastructure, power grids, satellites, water treatment plants, all targeted and destroyed. But then, they left. No occupation, no warning, just fire from the sky and departure, like exterminators confident their job was done. The death toll was beyond calculation. Billions gone. No communications, no governments, no supply chains. We scavenged for food and clean water in the wreckage, avoiding the Cure drones that swept cities for survivors. Those weren't hunters. They were janitors, programmed to clean up the stragglers. I wandered Boston once looking for my sister. I didn't find a body, just a glassed crater where her apartment complex had been. The city's bones were gone. Streets melted smooth, cars fused to the ground. The silence there was heavier than the ash in the air. Something in me cracked that day. The soldier in me, the one trained to follow orders, trust the chain of command, believe in victory, died in that crater. What rose from it wasn't a soldier anymore. It was something meaner. Something that didn't care about survival. We weren't soldiers now. We were ghosts. And ghosts don't surrender. That night, under the broken sky, we found words scratched into the side of an old satellite uplink, charred black but still legible. None of us admitted to writing them, but every one of us believed them. We died first, we win later. We didn't make a plan that night. We made a promise. If humanity had to crawl out of its own grave, so be it. If we had to fight with sticks, so be it. The Kir thought they ended us. They thought they'd crushed our species underfoot and walked away. They didn't realize they'd just recruited the deadliest army in history, an army of men and women with nothing left to lose. So, we went underground. We became shadows. We learned to move in silence, to scavenge, to strike back with whatever scraps we could find. We swore vengeance in the dark. Not because vengeance would save us, but because vengeance was all we had left. Humanity wasn't extinct, not yet. And I swore on the ruins of Boston that if the Kir came back, they'd learn a lesson no alien species had ever learned before. You can kill a human, but you can't kill what comes after. The first year after the fall wasn't a war. It was starvation, disease, and the kind of fear that grinds your teeth down. In your sleep, we didn't call ourselves a resistance, and that sounded too noble, too organized. In reality, we were scavengers, packs of armed carrion birds feeding on the corpse of our own civilization. I led what was left of Delta Company, 6 soldiers, 1 combat engineer named Keller, and a kid from Cleveland who couldn't have been more than 16. His name was Mason. He'd never held a rifle before the fall, but he learned fast. The Kir didn't give us time to train slow. Our one rule was simple. Stay small, stay invisible. The Kir drones patrolled abandoned cities in perfect formation, sweeping streets with cold precision. They weren't looking for prisoners. They were cleaning up pests. Anyone spotted was vaporized before they could scream. But humanity adapts. We always have. Always will. We learned how to jam their sensors using scavenged microwave relays. Learned to move at night, burrow by day. Learned that the Kir had blind spots. Not technological ones, but psychological. They didn't expect us to keep fighting. After extinction, they didn't guard what they thought was worthless. That was their first mistake. We founded in New Chicago. The city was a hollow skeleton. Glass towers melted halfway down, bridges sagging like wax. We'd come for food and ammunition, crawling through service tunnels like rats, when Mason stumbled on an unmarked security door in the basement of an old tech park. Behind it was Project Phoenix. It wasn't a weapon, not yet. Just a fragmented research lab buried in layers of bureaucratic secrecy, rows of dead terminals, broken power conduits, and in the center a sealed quantum core humming faintly under backup batteries. Keller practically wept when he cracked it open. "This isn't standard military tech," he whispered, fingers shaking as he read the encrypted tags. "This is post-mortal operations." I raised an eyebrow. "English, Keller." They were trying to map human consciousness. Store it digitally. You die, but your mind doesn't. They were nowhere near ready. But if I can finish what they started... The idea was insane. But we were past sanity. We tested it on Sergeant Hayes first. He was the oldest of us, a grizzled Marine who'd lost his entire family in the first wave. "If it kills me," he said, grinning through broken teeth, "that just saves me the trouble of doing it later." Keller set up a crude neural scan rig using scavenged medtech. The quantum core hummed as Hayes's brain patterns were mapped, encrypted, and stored. It was supposed to be theoretical, a backup with no way to restore, but Keller swore he could rig something. 2 days later, a Kerr recon drone caught us on a supply run. Hayes went down in a flash of plasma fire, half his chest gone. We buried him behind a burned-out diner, said a few words, and moved on. The next night, while I was on watch, Keller's jury-rigged comm crackled to life. "Don't bury me," a familiar voice said. "I'm not done yet." It was Hayes. Dead Hayes. Laughing Hayes. The Phoenix tech was crude, glitchy as hell, but it worked. Hayes wasn't alive, not in the old sense. He was data. He could speak to us through comms, pilot drones we scavenged, even sync with jury-rigged combat frames. It was like fighting alongside a ghost. The first time Hayes hijacked a Kerr recon unit, I thought I'd lost my mind. The thing turned on its own squad, ripping them apart before self-destructing. We watched the wreckage smolder from a rooftop, while his voice came through clear as day. "Guess I'm harder to kill than they thought." Phoenix changed everything. No longer just survivors, we were something new. Something the Kyr didn't understand. Soldiers who kept fighting after death. Men and women who didn't fear the battlefield because it couldn't take them permanently. Keller was cautious. He warned me the tech was untested, unstable. "Uploading burns memory," he explained. "You die, you lose fragments of yourself. Too many uploads and you'll stop being you." "Then we'll win before that happens," I told him. Even then, I wasn't sure I believed it. We began raiding more aggressively. Kyr supply drones went missing. Patrols never came back. Our dead soldiers, now calling themselves Echoes, infiltrated their systems, spreading chaos, but the tech had limits. Hayes complained of static in his thoughts. Sometimes his voice stuttered like bad radio. He'd forget details, names, places, even who he was talking to. Mason looked terrified every time it happened. I told him it was fine. I lied. By the end of the year, we had 5 Echoes in our unit. Real soldiers volunteering to die so they could keep fighting without fear. Every one of them laughed about it, but I saw the cracks forming. The more times they died, the colder they became. The Kyr noticed us eventually. We intercepted a transmission, Keller translating the alien code with a program Hayes had cobbled together from memory. Unacceptable persistence of human combat units. Recommend planet-wide purge. The Kyr didn't even consider us a threat. We were an anomaly to be exterminated, an infestation, not an enemy. But they underestimated humanity's favorite weapon: desperation. The Kyr left Earth mostly alone after the initial purge. They'd glassed the population centers and moved, unconfident we were finished. That overconfidence became our shield. They didn't guard their abandoned attack craft. They didn't expect humans to hijack them. They didn't expect our dead to fly their ships. We were learning to kill as ghosts. The first real test came when a Kyr gunship passed low over the ruins of St. Louis. Hayes slipped into its systems through a cracked maintenance port, his digital, laughter echoing in our headsets as he took full control. "Think they'll miss this one?" he joked, voice already distorting under the strain. He drove it straight into a patrol column. His second death, if death even meant anything now. But not his last. Keller retrieved his core from the wreckage and restored him again. The time we retreated back underground, Mason was grinning like a kid who'd just seen a magic trick. "We can't lose," he said. I didn't have the heart to tell him how wrong he was. We weren't unkillable. Not really. If the Kyr ever found our cores, they could destroy us for good. And every time an Echo re-uploaded, more of their humanity burned away. I could hear it in Hayes' voice. The laughter sounded hollow now, like someone imitating who he used to be. But for the first time since the fall, we were fighting back. Not surviving. Not hiding. Fighting. The Kir didn't know it yet. But humanity had just rewritten the rules of war. We'd turned death into a weapon, and the dead were very, very angry. The Phoenix tech turned death into an inconvenience that terrified me more than the Kir ever could. At first it felt like salvation. A soldier died, we pulled their quantum core from their gear, uploaded them into a combat frame or a scavenged drone, and they kept fighting. No funerals, no goodbyes, just a quick reboot. But war is supposed to have consequences. When you take that away, you start forgetting why you're fighting at all. By the end of our second year, Delta Company wasn't a company anymore. We were an experiment. Half alive, half dead, all dangerous. We called them Echoes now, not soldiers. They preferred it. Hayes wore the name like a badge of honor. After 3 deaths, his voice over comms had lost its warmth, replaced by a strange metallic calm. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He didn't even flinch under fire. Being alive is overrated, he told me once while piloting a stolen Kir recon walker through the ruins of Denver. Easy for you to say, I shot back. You're not alive anymore. He just laughed, a hollow crackling sound that made Mason look away. We weren't just surviving now. We were hunting. Phoenix gave us reach. Echoes could infiltrate Kir networks, slip into their drones, and sabotage their operations from the inside. Hayes led the first big op, hijacking a Kir gunship mid-flight and strafing their patrols with their own weapons. We watched from a safe distance as he drove it straight into one of their harvesters, laughing all the way down, but the tech wasn't perfect, uploading fried memories. Personalities fragmented. Keller said it was like photocopying a photocopy. Every death blurred the edges. Echoes forgot names, places, even themselves. I carried their cores like dog tags, swearing, I'd fix it. Keller warned me not to. We're not saving humanity, we're hollowing it out. Maybe he was right, but I didn't care. Winning mattered more than staying human. Our raids got bolder. We targeted Kir supply relays, stole fuel from their abandoned ships, even sabotaged their drone forges. We were small, maybe 20 people at our peak, but the Kir started noticing. One night in the ruins of Pittsburgh, Keller intercepted a transmission. We huddled around a cracked portable receiver as his translation program pieced the alien symbols into broken English. Human combat units persist after termination. Unacceptable anomaly. Recommend systemic purge. They're scared, Mason said, eyes wide. No, I corrected him. They're irritated. That's worse. The Kir still didn't understand us. They thought war was math. You calculate, force against resistance, apply overwhelming pressure, and resistance vanishes. They didn't grasp vengeance. They didn't grasp persistence beyond flesh. We turned their own weapons against them. Ghost 1, Hayes, hijacked a Kir shuttle and flew it into their orbital supply line, killing himself again in the process. 2 days later, he was back online like nothing happened. Our dead weren't just soldiers. They were viruses. Every drone they infected carried fragments of human rage, human memory, human grief. The Kir had never fought an enemy that treated death like a coffee break. But victory had its price. The more echoes we made, the less human our unit became. Sergeant Liu, a quiet man who'd once carried a picture of his kids everywhere, died 5 times in 1 month. By his 6th resurrection, he didn't even remember their names. I tried talking to him about it. You okay, Liu? You seem different. He looked at me through the optics of a Kir combat drone he was piloting. Different how? He asked in a voice stripped of emotion. Cold, detached. Good. Cold soldiers make fewer mistakes. The worst came during the Battle of Salt Flats. We'd set an ambush for a Kir patrol convoy, 3 recon crawlers and a command drone. Simple job. Blow them up, strip their parts, vanish before reinforcements arrived. Everything went smooth, until Mason took a plasma hit through the chest. We got his core out, but the upload burned something vital. When Mason came back, he didn't smile anymore, didn't joke, didn't even blink when Keller told him we were running low on food. Hayes called it combat focus. I called it losing the kid we'd been trying to protect. Still, Phoenix kept us alive, or whatever alive meant now. We started coordinating with other survivor cells, spreading the tech wherever we could. Some groups worshipped it like salvation. Others called us abominations. One commander even tried to destroy his own Echo soldiers, fearing they'd turn on the living. But the Kir feared us more than any human ever could. They ramped up drone sweeps, deployed heavier craft. They even glassed entire regions just to flush us out. But you can't kill what's already dead. Then we found proof the Kir could bleed. Keller intercepted orbital telemetry showing that the Kir harvesters weren't fully autonomous. They were guided by relay ships hidden in lunar orbit. If we could destroy the relays, we could blind entire fleets. The mission was suicide. Perfect for us. We called it Operation Karen. 30 soldiers. 15 Echoes. 1 decommissioned mining shuttle with missile racks welded to its hull. The living manned the guns. The dead flew the ship. As we approached the relay's position, Kir patrols swarmed us. Plasma fire chewed through the shuttle's armor. The living screamed over open comms. The dead stayed silent. When we breached the relay's hull, everything went to hell. Hayes led the charge, piloting a Kir exoframe like a metal demon. Liu tore through their internal defenses without a word. I watched men and women shrug off plasma burns, tearing Kir apart with their bare hands, because what did pain matter when you didn't stay dead? Hayes rammed the shuttle straight into their power core, detonating half our payload. The rest of us fought room to room, Keller dragging my bleeding body while I planted demolition charges. The relay exploded in a blossom of light visible from Earth. For the first time, Kir ships in low orbit fell from the sky like meteors, slamming into deserts and oceans. We'd proven it. The Kir weren't untouchable. They could bleed. When we regrouped in a deep shelter 2 weeks later, only 12 of us were left. 4 living, 8 Echoes. Hayes cracked jokes like nothing happened, even though he'd died twice more in the fighting. Mason didn't speak at all. I looked around at what was left of Delta Company and realized I didn't recognize half the voices anymore. They were human in memory only, their personalities smoothed down by repeated deaths until they were just efficient killers. But it didn't matter, because for the first time since the fall, humanity had hope. Cold, ruthless, unnatural hope, but hope nonetheless. We'd learned to kill as ghosts, and soon we'd teach the Kir that ghosts don't stop. They thought our weapons were primitive. They thought our fleets were outdated. They thought humanity had given up. I could almost hear their laughter in the silence of space as I watched their flagship drift arrogantly above Europa's orbit. Its polished hull gleamed in the reflected sunlight, a symbol of everything they thought they understood about war. They didn't understand us at all. Status on Project Helios? I asked, voice low, eyes locked on the tactical display. Charging, at 93%, Lieutenant Varma replied, his hands trembling even though he tried to hide it. If we fire at this range, we'll overload half our systems. I smiled thinly. That's the point. The Zoranth Alliance had shattered our defenses piece by piece, laughing at our plasma cannons, mocking our railguns, tearing through entire fleets like children stomping ants. We'd been retreating for months. Earth had gone dark to hide our last survivors. They thought we were finished. But Helios was different. It wasn't a weapon meant to fight fleets. It was meant to erase them. "Admiral," Varma whispered, "we'll only get one shot. One is all we need." The Zaranth flagship hailed us. I didn't bother responding. I already knew what they would say. Something about surrender. Something about humanity kneeling before their endless empire. Instead, I opened a secure channel to every human ship within range. "This is Admiral Cross. Whatever happens next, remember this. Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not break. We burn." A ripple of voices answered, some steady, some cracked with fear, but all of them alive. "Helios at 100%. Varma said. His voice was almost reverent. "Target their fleet core." The stars seemed to hold their breath. Fire. Light. Blinding, impossible light. The Helios array ripped open the void itself, channeling the raw fury of a star through a focused beam. The Zaranth fleet didn't even have time to maneuver. Ships evaporated in an instant, hulls turning to plasma, their shields collapsing like wet paper. The flagship, 10 kilometers of alloy and arrogance, split in half, its scream of tearing, metal silent in the vacuum. Then their reactors went critical. The chain reaction turned Europa's orbit into an artificial sunrise. I felt the shockwave hammer through our own ship, systems screaming, lights dying, gravity cutting out for a moment. But we were still here. Alive. "Report," I demanded, forcing my voice steady. "Zaranth fleet destroyed," Varma breathed. "All of it. Admiral." "We did it." I shook my head. "No. We've just made them angry." Because the Helios beam had been seen across half the system. Every Zaranth listening post would know, and they wouldn't be laughing anymore. For the first time since the war began, they'd be afraid. And fear was a weapon humanity wielded better than anyone. The stars were quieter than they should have been. No chatter on the long-range bands, no merchant traffic, no distant beacons pulsing their automated greetings. It was like the whole sector was holding its breath, waiting for something ugly to happen. And knowing my luck, that something would be me. We'd left the ruined docks of Ganaira Station smoldering behind us. 2 war frigates disabled, a dozen smaller vessels gutted, and my conscience a little heavier. I'd promised myself I wouldn't become like them, yet each battle made that promise harder to keep. "Vector locked," Kira said, her voice as cold as the void itself. "Next target's a relay hub on the Rillian trade line. If we cut it, they'll lose half their supply routes." I glanced at her over the dim glow of the bridge consoles. "How many civilian transports use that route?" Her jaw tightened. She knew exactly what I was asking. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands." "And you still want to take it out?" Kira didn't blink. "Every convoy they can't supply is one less fleet they can send to hunt us. This isn't about mercy anymore, Captain. This is about survival." I hated how calm she sounded. She was right, of course. The enemy had shown humanity no mercy when they glassed Earth's surface. They didn't spare hospitals. They didn't spare children. Yet every time I ordered a strike, I felt like I was feeding something dark inside me. Something that wanted blood more than justice. "Patch me through to the others," I said finally. Kira tapped the comms. "Open line." "This is Captain Rourke," I said, forcing my voice steady. "We're approaching the relay hub. I need everyone on board with what happens next. If we destroy it, The Rillians will starve out entire systems to keep their fleets fed. We'll save lives now but cost them later. This is the line. Do we cross it? There was silence on the channel. Then Jax's gravel voice came through first. They didn't ask us before they bombed our cities. Why should we ask them? Another voice, softer. Leon, the medic we'd picked up on Titan's ruins. Captain, I swore to save lives, not take them. But if we don't fight, there won't be anyone left to save. One by one, the rest of the crew spoke. Some eager, some uncertain, none refusing. I killed the channel and leaned back in my chair. Seems they've already chosen. Then, give the order, Kira said. I did, and I hated myself for it. The hub defenses never stood a chance. We hit them fast, hard, no warnings. Rail slugs punched through shield rings, shredding comm arrays and reactor coils. Plasma bursts lit up the void like miniature suns, boiling the relay's skeletonized arms to slag. Within 9 minutes, the most important traffic node in the sector was a silent hulk tumbling through darkness. But the screams stayed with me. Not from the hub, it was mostly automated, but from the convoy we intercepted afterward. They weren't military, just cargo haulers, families trying to get somewhere safer. And when their guidance systems went dark, they drifted straight into a debris field. By the time we reached them, dozens were dead from hull breaches and collisions. It wasn't our shots that killed them, but it was our choice. That night, alone in my quarters, I stared at Earth's flag pinned above my bunk. The colors looked dull, faded, like they were ashamed of me. I wondered if I was still fighting for humanity, or just fighting to hurt someone back. Kira came in without knocking. She'd stopped standing on ceremony weeks ago. You're blaming yourself again. Maybe because it's my fault, I muttered. Those people would have died anyway. The Rillians control the lanes. You can't save everyone. I'm not trying to save everyone, I said bitterly. I'm trying to save us from becoming them. She sat down across from me, eyes hard. Then you better figure out where your line is, Captain. Because the enemy's not slowing down and next time we'll need to hit something even bigger. I looked at her, at the steel in her voice, and realized she wasn't warning me. She was daring me. We set course for the next strike with no ceremony, no words. Just a shared understanding. If victory demanded our souls, humanity might not have much left worth saving. I'd seen enough battlefields to know when one was about to turn into a graveyard. Ours or theirs. The war had changed in ways no one anticipated. 2 months ago, the Virek were laughing, calling humans cave-born apes with toys. Now they weren't laughing. Now they were bleeding. But so were we. I stood on the command balcony of the UHS Resolute, staring down at a holographic map of the Karthus Rift. A dozen red clusters marked Virek fleets. Half as many blue clusters marked ours. It looked even, but it wasn't. Their fleets were disciplined, engineered, almost perfect. Ours were human, scarred, mismatched, patched together with equal parts genius and desperation, and somehow that made us dangerous. Admiral, the strike teams are ready, said Commander Patel, her voice tight. But we still haven't received authorization from Earth Council. This op is off the books, sir, I smirked. Council hasn't authorized anything that's actually worked so far. Prepare to launch. Patel hesitated, then nodded. Good officer. Still believed in rules. I didn't have that luxury. Not after Sanros. Not after the screaming in the debris fields. We dropped into the rift under full blackout. No lights, no signals, just cold engines and the faint thrum of human hearts beating too fast. Our target was a Virek refueling nexus, hidden inside an asteroid cluster. If we cracked it, their forward offensive would choke. If we failed, Earth would disavow us, and the Virek would slaughter everyone here. The dropships detached silently, gliding like knives. I was aboard Hammer 12, suited up, rifle charged, mind steady. Lieutenant Ramos broke the silence. "Sir, you ever wonder if this is too easy?" "It's never easy," I said. "If it feels easy, that's when you're already dead." We breached the Nexus with perfect precision. Airlocks cut, gravity sabotaged, Virek guards down before they could raise alarms. We planted microcharges along the refueling conduits. Then something went wrong. The conduits were empty. The Nexus wasn't operational. And the Virek soldiers we'd taken down? They weren't guards. They were corpses. That's when the holograms triggered. An enormous Virek warlord shimmered into view, its mandibles curling upward in what passed for a grin. "Humans," it rasped. "Predictable, reckless, so proud of your cleverness." Every comm crackled to life at once, overriding our jammers. Dozens of voices, Virek, cold and amused, spoke in unison. "We laugh at your courage. We laugh at your hope. And we laugh loudest when you die thinking it mattered." The asteroid cluster lit up with energy signatures. Dozens of Virek cruisers uncloaking, surrounding us like sharks. I snapped into command mode. "Hammer teams, evac now! Resolute, bring up every gun you've got. No more stealth." "Sir, they've boxed us in." Patel's voice was ragged, panicked. "We can't punch through without—" "Do it!" I roared. The rift became hell. Human ships roared to life, missiles shredding Virek hulls at point-blank range. We weren't maneuvering. We were brawling, knife-fighting with starships. I could feel Resolute shudder through my boots even from this far away. I fought my way to the dropship, armor scorched, lungs burning. Ramos was dragging a wounded corporal, shouting something I couldn't hear over the explosions. We launched blind, tearing through the void, Virek beams slicing past us. One slammed into our aft section, throwing us end over end. I slammed a gauntlet against the stabilizers, praying to every god humanity ever forgot. We cleared the rift, but the cost. Of 6 Hammer teams, only 2 made it out. Resolute limped away, shields fried, hundreds dead. And still somehow the Virek were laughing. When we limped back to Earth orbit, the Council summoned me. "You disobeyed direct orders," one senator said, voice cold. "You've cost us ships, lives, political leverage." I cut her off. "You think this is about leverage?" They knew we were coming. They set a trap because they've stopped underestimating us. That should terrify you. The chamber fell silent. I didn't wait for permission. I kept going. The Virek don't laugh because they think we're weak. They laugh because they think we're predictable. We keep fighting their way. That ends now. If we want to win, we fight like humans, not like them. I walked out before they could stop me. The war was no longer about orders or politics, it was personal. They wanted to laugh. Fine. We'd make sure it was their last joke. The throne room of the X-Wire Dominion was nothing like I expected. No gold. No jewels. Just cold obsidian walls and a single table, because they no longer dared to sit above anyone. Not above me. The war was already over, though no treaties had been signed. I walked through the hall in silence, my boots striking the black stone like hammer blows. The guards didn't move, their weapons didn't rise. They knew it would be useless. At the far end sat the High Regent, once the most feared being in 3 galaxies. Now his posture sagged like a man awaiting his own execution. "Human," he said, voice hollow. "You've come to demand our surrender?" I let the silence stretch. The power was intoxicating. I had started this war with nothing but rage and A stolen ship. Now entire fleets bowed when I passed. Planets whispered my name like a curse, but I wasn't here for surrender. You thought humanity was weak, I said, letting the words echo. You laughed when our cities burned. You thought we'd break. But you don't understand what happens when humans stop being afraid. The regent's mandibles twitched. We understand now. I almost pitied him. Almost. Their empire had been forged on the assumption that prey would always run. But humans didn't run. We evolved, we adapted, and when that wasn't enough, we became something else entirely. I had seen it firsthand. The neural augments, the biofusion with war machines, the things humanity had to do to survive. Soldiers no longer slept. Blood no longer clot. Fear was chemically erased from our DNA. And somewhere along the line, we stopped being merely human. They don't want peace, I said, thinking of the warriors who now followed me without question. They want an enemy, something to sharpen themselves against. And you? The regent asked. What do you want? I stepped closer, until my reflection warped in his compound eyes. I want you to remember this moment, when the galaxy realized humanity doesn't kneel, not to gods, not to empires, not to anyone. He lowered his gaze. I could see the question trembling in his throat. What will you do with this power? I didn't answer it for him. I didn't have to. The ships in orbit would carry the message, louder than any words. Humanity wasn't here to rule. Ruling was too small a goal. We were here to make sure no one ever tried this again. As I left the throne room, I glanced back only once. The regent hadn't moved. He looked like a statue carved out of fear. Outside, the soldiers who had once mocked humanity stood at attention, their weapons pointed downward in respect, or terror. Maybe both. I spoke over the comms to every human fleet commander across the gay sector. It's done. They won't challenge us again. Should we finish them? Someone asked. The voice was flat, mechanical. One of ours who'd been changed too many times to sound human anymore. I looked up at the stars. Billions of lives hung in the balance. For the first time since this war began, I felt tired. No, I said. We're not executioners. We're proof. Proof that humanity could take hell itself and make it kneel. Proof that if you laugh at us long enough, we'll stop being human and start being something worse. Something better. Something divine. As our fleets broke orbit, I realized the X-Wire had learned their lesson. But the rest of the galaxy? They were still watching. Still wondering. And somewhere deep inside, a part of me wondered if we'd just become the very monsters we swore to destroy. But for now, we walked away. Not because we were merciful, but because gods don't need to kill everyone to prove they're gods.